to show, and the walls kept tumbling down in the city that we love. Gray clouds roll over the hills, bringing darkness from above. But if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like nothing changed at all? If you close your eyes, does it almost feel like you've been here before? How am I gonna be an optimist about this? How am I gonna be an optimist about this?
I'm in Rhode Island, actually, at a fire marshal's conference. And we were all going into a program that was being put on by ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, for fire investigations and explosion investigations. And we were all sitting down, and all of a sudden everybody's pager started to beep. And all the suits that were in the room from the federal government just started to disappear. And before we knew it, they came in the room with televisions, and they were showing what was happening in New York City, and it was unbelievable.
I was home alone on 9/11, listening to NPR when the broadcast was interrupted. I immediately called my friends and family to make sure they were okay. I needed to hear their voices. And then I spent the day watching replays, interviews, updates on the television. I wanted to know everything about what happened.
Okay, well, I was like 1.5, and my parents took me on vacation to California. And this happened while we were there, so we couldn't get a flight back, so we had to drive cross country. So I imagine that was fun, but I don't remember anything.
I get a call that there's 2 MPs standing downstairs asking for me, and I'm like, I have no idea. And they're like, well, you need to go downstairs. And most people don't know this, but in a psych hospital, everything is locked and keyed, even elevators. So you can't just move around. So I come down, there's 2 armed MPs. They come up to me, are you John? And I said, yes. And they said, we need you to come with us. And I'm like, what did I do? Like, I had no idea why they were there. And they said, well, you've been reactivated. And I'm like, from what? And they said, well, you were a trauma counselor. Like, you're not going to New York, you're going to DC. I'm like, why? They said, the Pentagon's been hit. What I did was I would go to airplane crash sites or places where there's airplane crashes and do counseling for the people involved.
And then my husband jumped in the car and he went up to Litchfield School and he basically said, I want my kids. All we wanted to do is just like gather our immediate family. It was like a reaction. We didn't think like what it meant, what we're gonna do. All we needed to do is we needed to like gather the family. And so he went up, and he wasn't the only one. They immediately just said, take your kids. And we all went home, and I think we all just sat and watched on the TV.
So I was 1, like a lot of people my age were 1. And my parents, we lived close near New York, and they saw the Twin Towers go down. And then my mama felt the aftermath. And then my brother at school called my mama and was like, oh, leave your child here, don't pick him up, we don't want nothing bad to happen. So a 1-year-old experience on all that, it was just like another normal day, to be honest with you, because I didn't know what was going on. I was 1. Did I not say I was 1?
The thing that shook me up the most was watching those people jump off the building. That I still have nightmares about. I have a nightmare of what it was probably like up there and why they jumped off the building, and I don't blame.
Okay, I was at the phone company at the day it happened, and I had a call come in, and they were telling me that a plane had gone into the one of the Twin Towers, and then we received a bulletin board across the phone company telling us 2 planes had gone in. I'm gonna get emotional. Hold on, stop for a minute. And we spent the day talking to people and not looking for information itself, but just people wanted to talk to somebody because they were watching this on the news, they were watching TV, and it was just kind of overwhelming for people. It affected me by, let's see, it affected me by losing my young cousin, who after 9/11 had to go into over to Iraq. He was a Kiowa pilot. They were doing flight runs and he ended up crashing. That's what they said. And he had 2 young girls under the age of 4 that he left behind.
This is going to sound kind of egotistical as an American, but I feel like we're a force to be reckoned with, and I think that terrifies a lot of other places, a lot of other countries in the world, and I think it happened because we got sloppy. And I know that's a bad thing to say, but there was just a lot of stuff that should have been happening that was not happening.
I believe 9/11 happened because of fanatic, radical ideologies and viewpoints. You know, it'd be easy for me just to say it was because of Muslim radical terrorists, especially coming from a primarily conservative household. But I can't help but have to try to challenge myself, to push myself to look beyond what I'm taught by my family and what I'm taught through media coverage of 9/11, and look into the exact motives behind the people that perpetrated 9/11.
I think when they first did the garage of the Twin Towers a few years before this happened, my husband always said we should have been more on guard for this. I believe it, how do I explain? I just knew it was something they wanted to take down the American people. And they didn't on this, they brought us closer. And that's one thing that we need to just remember in the United States. We are a close nation.
I don't know why it happened. Obviously, a lot of families, there was a lot of families destroyed and you know, damage and things like that. But I don't know why it happened. I don't know why some of the things that we watch in the news every day happen. It's just, this is crazy. But I know here locally that a lot of, and across the country, a lot of good came of it, because I think we're much better prepared.
I think 9/11 happened because of President Bush.
How it happened at our end, the U.S. situation. In short, we were asleep at the wheel. Our Secretary of Defense at the time, Donald Rumsfeld, didn't believe that, even though there was news out there that Osama bin Laden was going to hit, you know, he didn't believe it was going to be there was going to be a disaster even comparable to what 9/11 turned out to be.
I also think another problem was we had too many agencies, and maybe if you took every agency together, and we may have, but that wasn't the way we worked then. So I just believe it was bound to happen at some time.
Everyone talks about, well, people older than me talk about pre-9/11 America and how there was a much different, I guess, vibe and attitude among the citizens of this country. And that's something I'll never understand, because I can't remember anything before 9/11. And the people, our future generations, will just be growing up with all these security measures.
I think 9/11 should be included in every history curriculum from primary school through college and graduate studies. I think it was a very important event in our country's history.
I think it needs to be in the history books you know, the newer ones that are being released, and they should teach kids about them, about what happened that day.
Well, we do have the museum and at the Ground Zero. We do have that. I think every person should go see that. I think there needs to be shared narratives from people who have survived that.
I feel like future generations won't really care. To be honest with you, I don't think they're gonna care at all.
And 9/11 should be also taught to every generation coming up in school. It's why we are here today, for our veterans.
I believe conspiracy theories should be introduced because they were there, and I think people need to know the difference between what a conspiracy theory is, what a theory is, and what is actual fact. But I think every single piece of 9/11 should be introduced because I don't think you get the whole picture.
For people that live through it, it stays with you. It's something that you'll never forget. And I think people do have to understand that a lot of the things that we enjoy, we can't take for granted because somebody can take them away from you. And there's a lot of crazy things happening around the world that scare me. And I wonder what kind of world we're leaving.
I think it will always be remembered. But probably as time goes by, I guess other factors will take precedent over that. And a lot of people don't like to think about it, maybe.
I'm hoping it's going to be remembered. I know a lot of people will remember on their own. And it should be kept as a situation that tried to bring us down.
Well, everything becomes history, and the historians will definitely never let that fade away. I think it's way too important.
And I think we'll always be remembered because we have so many different monuments, and we also have, it's just built in American history. So it's always going to be there and it will always be talked about. I don't think it would ever really fade away.
I think 9/11 will be remembered forever. I think that 9/11 triggered a lot of important policy changes. It triggered a lot of important TSA guidelines, safety guidelines. There were a lot of things that happened after 9/11. I've heard even courses structured on post 9/11.
That's a good question. I know it will be remembered for a long time. I think every generation has their major thing. Like, I remember my parents saying, I remember when John F. Kennedy was dying, exactly what was happening, what was doing. We still remember that. And I think that's what'll happen with 9/11 is I think it will be taught in history. I think we'll remember it. I think as the generation where it happened, I think once they have passed, it will just be a part of history as JFK was shot, or when World War II started. Or
I think it will always be remembered, but it's going to fade into, I always find this kind of an interesting concept where the truths change with time and with the telling of the story. And if we tell the story wrong, it actually becomes truth down the line.
I think that's something that will fade. As far as like people are just going to get used to the fact that wherever you go, there's going to be cameras, and much of that is due to the 9/11 attacks.
I think 9/11 will always be remembered because every year there's a memorial about that day, and we always remember the heroes that lost their lives and the people who sacrificed their lives to save, like the plane that went down in Pennsylvania, and they sacrificed themselves to save, the target that the plane was going for. And I think, it should always be remembered, and I think it will in the future to come.
The actual event will be remembered always. It will be in the history books. It'll be in our textbooks. What I'm concerned about is that we'll have less of an emotional attachment.
I think everything fades away at some point. Certainly not in my lifetime, and I don't think in yours. I hope, but eventually, yeah, it'll be forgotten.